Welcome, Twin Flames, and I was just about to say Twin Flame Crosswatchers, but that kind of includes everybody. Welcome to your November 2023 love reading. I haven't done a Twin Flame reading in a long time, so I'm really looking forward to it. So we have the relationship situation here. It is the Tower and the Ace of Cups reversed. And then we're going to look at what each of you is thinking and feeling, actions or intentions towards each other. And then we are going to get some twin flame messages from these decks. So we're going to do DM, DF, and we will get into it here. So what is the DF? What's in the DF's headspace? Oh, okay. Okay. King of Cups, Ten of Pentacles, and it feels like you are in a place right now where it's almost like you're feeling very soft, but to the world you have to present as very hard, right? It's like you're going through the motions, you're doing what needs to be done, but it's like you would rather be anything than kind of like the stone cold person that you have to be right now. And it almost feels like, it's almost like you know that you're doing what you need to do, but there seems to be such sorrow that you're carrying. It's almost like every step that you would take is so heavy with, it feels like defeat and sorrow, but none of that's showing on your face. It's almost like part of you wants to fall apart and the other part of you would never dare to do such a thing in front of people. You'd never dare to expose that part of your heart to somebody. There's this feeling of betrayal, and it could be somebody else, but I feel like you may be feeling almost betrayed by yourself somehow, that you let it get this far. It's almost like you may be going through some of that sort of like narrative in your head, but I feel like you know that whatever happened, it's almost like it was not that you were powerless to stop it, because that's never quite the case. We always have a choice, right? But it's almost like whatever it was that happened between you and this issue that makes you feel betrayed, I feel like you know that there was no way around it anyway. And it's not like, oh, it's fated for you to suffer. I don't really buy into that sort of understanding, but I feel like, okay, so let me put it this way. The twin flame journey is about healing, to my understanding anyway. But I personally don't subscribe to the belief that there's a higher power that's going to throw all of this really hard stuff at you just so you can be stronger for the next hard thing, right? I don't really believe that personally, so that's not really what I'm going to talk about. I just wanted to say that. I feel like you're kind of wrestling with, it's almost like part of you may be experiencing a lot of this heaviness and a lot of this feeling of betrayal. It's almost like you may not want to talk about it because it's like, it just feels like there's nothing to talk about. Part of me wants to say this might be very small. I don't think it's for most of you, but for some of you, it actually feels like whatever happened is actually far enough behind that you feel like you shouldn't feel that heaviness about it anymore. So you've just stopped talking. And it's almost like, and there's that bit of it that you're just carrying around, and that's where that weight is coming from. It's almost like you've just allowed that heavy fog to kind of settle in your soul, and you're just living that way. Okay. And Four of Cups. So the Four of Cups talks about, it often talks about feeling like unnoticed or feeling like there's something, either someone's offer isn't being noticed. And I actually feel like what's going on here is, I feel like you know that there's something that's available to you here, um, but it's almost like on principle alone, you're not going to do it. I want to say that it's almost like you're doing it to have a certain impression, or it's almost like there's a certain societal pressure that tells you that you can't. But let me clarify that a little bit. It's not like you're dancing to somebody else's tune. It actually feels like this is more like your moral fortitude coming through, right? So it's like it's not that the world thinks that you should and that's why you're doing it. It's like you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you did this thing because you know what message that would communicate about you to the world. If you did whatever this is, I feel like you would be giving that person, not that you'd be judgmental, right? But you'd be looking at that person like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It's almost like whatever the payoff that you would be getting out of it. Hold on for a second. It's not going to solve this heaviness that you're feeling anyway. I hope that made sense. It does feel like there's something about this situation that actually seems like this here, this specifically. It actually feels like it takes some of that heaviness away. I don't really know what it is. It actually feels like you, hold on for a sec. Hold on. It's almost this energy of like, whatever it was, whatever this is, I want to say like remembering that you've let go of it or remembering that you were strong enough to make this choice. It actually seems to make this doing this a lot better. It's almost like whatever this was, it feels like it was way harder than what it is that you're dealing with right now. And it doesn't mean that this doesn't hurt at all. It just feels like it seems to take some of the edge off. It's almost like, please, this may not be the actual situation, it's just the energetics of it. But it's almost like whatever this is that's kind of coming at you here, I feel like it's almost made you feel defeated. Whereas this, remembering that you made through this, you're able to look at this as much smaller than something you've already survived. So it's like that you're going to make it through whatever this is when you think about this one, but it's not like it takes all of this away immediately. There's still the loss there, right? I don't know why I'm being reminded of this, but I'll just say it anyway. In the there's a story about Lot in the Bible, and the details are a little bit foggy, so please forgive me if they're incorrect. But the general gist of it is, someone God was conversing with said that this person, Lot, was only faithful and pious to him because he had so much. He had like many wives and children and livestock and all that stuff. And so in order to prove this person wrong, this is in the Bible, if I'm remembering correctly, he actually had a house. I don't even want to say this now. He had a house fall on his family, everyone but him, and made him lose all of his livestock and struck him down with this illness. And I don't even know why I'm saying this now. And Lot didn't kind of waver from praising God. And so the story goes is then he restored him and gave him more wives and more children and so on and so forth. And so like, yeah, it's great that relating it back to this, it's like, yes, it's great that Lot was restored, but the loss of his wives and his children and all of those things, that's still there. right? So it's that kind of a thing. I mean, I hope that that's not what you're going through, my God. But it's that kind of a deal, right? It's like you're able to look at it and be like, yeah, okay, I'm like, I can handle this, but it doesn't mean that what is happening is without cost, if that makes sense. So actually, I think we're going to get some. Can we get? What does the DF want to hear? We will be together again. What does the DF expect to hear? Being apart has been life-changing for me. If the DM could talk to the DF, what would they say? I know you're right, but I need to come to my own conclusions. I feel like it's going back to that same kind of energy, right? It's like, yeah, that's great. It's great that DF, that you're right, that the DM understands, but you're still sitting in this nonsense. You're still sitting in this, right? Is it possible to forgive and forget? From what I'm seeing, it almost feels like some of this heaviness would have to clear before, from what I'm seeing, okay? I feel like some of the heaviness that you've experienced would kind of have to clear out before, like, let's say the DM showed up at your door tomorrow. I feel like that wouldn't clear what you're going through right now. That heaviness would still be there. So, what are the actions or intentions of the DF? Actions or intentions? Okay. We have the Ten of Swords. Sorry, I'm looking at the cards. Ten of Swords with the Five of Wands at the bottom of the deck. The Ten of Swords talks about it's almost like things have gotten as bad as they can get, but the bottom's been hit, right? It's almost like acceptance of betrayal. And now, please let me explain that. It doesn't mean that you're accepting other people treating you poorly, right? It's like you're accepting that what has happened is what's happened. And that there isn't much that you can do to change what's already happened. And I wish that I could tell you something different, but I feel like even if I did, you wouldn't believe it because of where you're at, because of the heaviness. So I feel like you're just going through an acceptance of what's been done to you. I feel like for some of you, it made you feel isolated, or you have chosen to isolate yourself to a certain extent, right? It's like, even if you're around people, you're not really opening up. It's almost like you might not laugh the way that you used to. Or it's almost like maybe you are, quote unquote, on when you're out and in front of people at work or with friends or whatever, but then you go home and it's almost like you just leave the TV off and stare at the TV that's still off, not wanting to talk or move or anything really. It's almost this like a blank, empty feeling. Okay. I'm just going to get this deck. We're going to clarify this a bit. What else does the DF need to know about this Ten of Swords? So we have the Two of Swords with the Hermit. I mean, so the Two of Swords talks about, I feel like you know that there's a decision that needs to be made here. And I feel like you actually know what you're going to decide when you are ready to make the decision. It just feels like you kind of need to, not that you need to go through all this sorrow, okay? It's more like that's not the advice that the cards are giving. What I'm seeing is that you're feeling like you just kind of need to go through your process of this loss and processing, like, even if no one has passed on, if you have lost something, there's still a grieving process involved in that, right? Because you still have to learn to think without it. So, for example, if you have been, we'll use a friend, just a friendship to describe this. If you've been friends with someone for a long time, and then for whatever reason, the two of you are no longer friends, you still have lived your life in a way that thinks about them as present. So, for example, if something really good happens to you, maybe there's somebody you would call. And the same thing if something negative or you needed support or, checking in with them or going out, for a night on the town with them, what have you. And when that friendship is over, all of those thought processes or thought patterns have to change as if that person is no longer around. So whether or not they're actually physically here, there still is a loss. There still is a grieving process. And I feel like you actually seem to have a pretty good understanding of what you're going through. It just feels like you're going through it alone. And I feel like that seems to be the really devastating part of it. I I really got to give it to you here, though, DF. It doesn't feel like, it's almost like the thought or the concept of giving up or not continuing on, it's not even in your headspace. It's almost like even me saying that would sound like it's, like I'm speaking Latin or something, right? Like it does not compute with where you're at. It's just a matter of you going through it. And I feel like there may be a little bit, I'm going to ask you a question here instead of telling you something. Is it possible that part of the heaviness that is lingering or that is making you feel that emptiness, is it that you are trying to deny some of the feelings that you're having because you feel like they're, like you shouldn't feel this way? It shouldn't have been, going back to what the cards were saying, again, might not be the actual situation, right? But it's the energetics of it. Going back to the cards were saying like, oh, the betrayal that you experienced was too far ago. You shouldn't be worried about it anymore. It's that type of denial of how you're actually feeling seems to be the biggest piece here. And so I want to stress that if you are feeling that way, the way that I've come to kind of understand that process, acknowledging that you feel a certain way is not the same thing as saying that it makes sense that you feel that way, right? So like if you're still sad about something years later, there's nothing wrong with being sad about it. You're not letting it stop you from, there's a certain amount of enjoyment that you've lost in your life, not lost, that you have set aside or that has been dampened. But I feel like a lot of that emptiness and this almost like deadened feeling inside may be coming from denying that emotion, right? It's this feeling of like, I don't want to cry about this again. How many more times? It could be that you're, if ever you've been through an ego death or a spiritual awakening, I think there's one other phrase, but I can't remember. But it's one of those things where, you feel like you're kind of going crazy. And I'd love to sit here and tell you that there's an end date, but I don't know that, right? When I went through kind of a spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it, and I remember feeling that way. I remember feeling like, how much more is this gonna go? Um, and I wish I had some like words of encouragement. Part of me feels like they would fall on deaf ears, but I'm going to say it anyway. I can tell you that it doesn't last forever. And I know that you know that. The way that I handled it, and I'm not saying this because this is what you should do. This is the only way that the only kind of, I don't know how else to say it. I feel like I'm stumbling, so I'm just going to get to it. It's like avoiding feeling those feelings is not going to make this go away. It's not going to, it's not like you can stop it once it's started. Once the dam is broken, it's broken and it's going to happen, right? However, if in order for you to keep your head above water, you need to take a break from the healing and kind of go a little bit dull inside. If that's what you need to do, then that's okay. I just want to stress really, really strongly that you can't allow yourself to stay there, right? So it's like, use that time to try to find a way to find some enjoyment in your life and strengthen yourself back up, and then dip back into that healing pool when you feel like you have enough juice, so to speak, to do so. So I didn't expect for it to be this long just for the DF, so I think I will stop the video here and I'll upload one DF, one DM if you would like to hear the DM. I will leave all these cards on the table and I'll just do the DM and upload that. So I love you, DF. If you don't plan on listening to the DM video, I love you very much. I know that you can do this, and I know that you know it. And it's okay if it takes time. Much love. Bye.